a problem there to begin with. And we are not in a space where we should be allowing people to have the expectation that subtle forms of violence are acceptable. So they're not.
Violence, specifically in healthcare. And I'm delighted to have a really wonderful guest this morning. And I want to tell you a little bit about her as we get started. Lynn is just an unbelievable person and expert in this field. She's currently the president of Lynn Van Male LLC, a private consulting firm. And she was also a senior director of threat management for a large multi-state, not-for-profit healthcare organization, and the past national director of the United States Veterans Health Administration's Workplace Violence Prevention Program. And predating her executive leadership roles, Dr. Van Male's clinical practice focused on post-traumatic stress disorder recovery. Her work in violence prevention and behavioral threat assessment and management has been presented nationally and internationally. She served on the Joint Commission's Technical Advisory Panel for Workplace Violence, and her work in violence prevention solutions for healthcare settings was published in the 2016 Journal of the American Medical Association. And I could go on, but I'm going to pause there. So, Lynn, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so grateful that you're here with us.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's my honor.
Sure.
What have you found some of the challenges to be in implementing your work, minus money, right? What might be some of the challenges you've had to try to address? Please, Dr. Van Male.
Thank you. Whenever we've started these programs in any organization, we've usually had about 6 filters that we have to take a look through, the lenses of how we're going to sell this and operate it effectively and ethically. So number one, because I'm a clinician, I need to look at things that are clinical. What is the clinical implication of what we're doing? Does this make sense from a mental health perspective, this program that we're going to do? Number two, what are the legal implications? I think Mr. Diaz was mentioning, how can we legally obtain the information that we need given the different laws of information sharing? So what's the legal implication for this? Then we've got the ethics, that we hopefully are always keeping our compass pointing north on the ethics of this work. That will then drive some of the political things that we have to consider. What are the larger, literally political, like, do you have to answer to Congress? Are you a federal organization with federal funding that you need to answer to the taxpayers, to the state and local taxpayers? What are the politics of your own institution? K through 12 and higher ed have no politics at all, right? None. Right? Healthcare has politics. Churches, houses of worship have politics in place. Then we need to pass it through what the optics are. You may have great clinical, legal, ethical, and political drivers, but if your optics of what you're doing don't meet your community's expectations, you're going to have a hard time actually getting some implementation. And then financial, which was off the table, but it's still a major driver. So any one of those areas, we're constantly taking a look at how to get these programs to play through those lenses so that we have support and buy-in when we actually implement.
Do the right thing. And I think sometimes with some of the, I guess you would call them introductory behaviors, but that lower level violence, which could be intimidation, or it could just be an insult, something about your appearance, or something along those lines. I think people are often willing to just kind of brush that off a little bit. Would you say that's a mistake to do that?
Okay, fine. So you do it once, but how often do you let it happen? And once becomes twice in the day, becomes 3 times in the day, becomes you personally are then getting constantly berated, and it's undermining your ability until at some point in time you've had enough, and the next person who comes in doesn't get the best of you when they are possibly at the worst of them. So there's a problem there to begin with. And we are not in a space where we should be allowing people to have the expectation that subtle forms of violence are acceptable. So they're not.
About it. How do you operationalize it, conceptualize it?
I want the base rate of reporting to go up. That's how I know I'm successful. And that seems counterintuitive because I'm asking for money, I'm asking for resources. I'm going to say I'm giving you the optics and the data to show you that what we're doing is effective. People want to see the base rate of violence go down. And what will happen instead is that our success, if we're doing it right, is going to skyrocket the number of reports that we get. And within that, success looks like a change in the ratio of what you're being told about. So you want to get more. If you think about 1 in 5 events are usually reported, 1 in 5. I can tell you all about the research of how we get that, but there's about 1 in 5, and it's a universal phenomenon across sectors. If you know 20% of what is happening, and then tomorrow, next year, you double that, and people say, what just happened? You doubled the amount of violence with your program? Now we know 40% of what's actually happening. And we're going to triple it, and then we'll still only know 60% of what's happening. You want that 5-fold increase to finally think that you're being told about everything that's going on. And then within that, you want a big ratio of all the verbal, the ideation, the grievance level stuff. And then some where you actually caught it at research and planning and preparation. And then some of those are still going to be your breaches and your attacks. But if you can get the ratio of those to go down within the rest of your data skyrocketing, it means that you're being effective. So there's some really nice things to think about wanting more reports as opposed to wanting them to go away.
Thank you. We had one question, and with different issues, because there's a tension between getting reports and in Nebraska has Safe to Help. We have 988, which is sort of like the mental health version of 911. How do we get people to understand how they can report and what you need? What kinds of strategies have you all thought about? I mean, we're doing better putting things out there, but how do we help people figure that out?
Lots and lots of marketing. Truly, we put tons and tons of effort into creating easy, accessible reporting systems, making sure that if someone bothers to take the time to report, they get some sort of an individualized, customized response. I love it when I shop on Amazon and I get a little notification that says your package has been delivered. I'm like, no, it hasn't. Ding dong. I'm like, oh, here it is. Yay, right? So I get immediate feedback that there's been action that's been taken on my behalf that I initiated. I get a return receipt when I make a report. I call someone and I get a return phone call within less than 24 hours, right? So that if we are responsive on the other end, build it and they will come, right? So the reporting strategies of a little bit here gets word of mouth out, gets trust built, and then all of a sudden our report numbers start skyrocketing. Lots and lots of marketing has been happening there. And it's not necessarily big flash posters, right? It's what we do. It's our own integrity in play.
It's not okay to be bullied, to be intimidated, to be harassed, and to calmly and collectively say to someone, you know what, we employ people in this organization across all backgrounds who are fully qualified and competent, and we are very proud to be able to offer Dr. So-and-so's services that meet your specific need, right? And it doesn't need to then have to be a racial slur against Dr. So-and-so, because we're not talking there. We're talking about quality of healthcare delivery. And then it's up to us as an organization to make sure that this doctor is fully supported in his.
Sure, follow-up, please.
So the tension I was really pointing to is between wanting people to report if you see something, but also the concern that a lot of us have watching some reports that seem misguided or lead to action against an individual that is right. And so I think that is the hesitancy that people have. And so how do you counter that tension?
You know, the number one thing that I would recommend there is not to have zero tolerance language in your policies. ever. I know this is a strange response to that, but when we get this idea as administrators or politicians or people who are writing out expectations of infrastructure, and we say we have a zero tolerance for violence in our workplace, we have zero tolerance for students who misbehave, right? We have zero tolerance for acting out against our healthcare providers. That's not true. We tolerate things all the time, right? So we've already undermined ourselves with lack of credibility by saying something that we're not going to support, right? So that's number one. And then number two, there's a lot about this employee and this really strange behavioral change I'm noticing that scares me, because we have a zero tolerance policy and they'll get fired. And then they won't have a job, and then they'll come after me. So I better not say anything. So we don't want to trigger absolutely absurd outcomes for people. And the reason that some of those outcomes are triggered is because of the policies we ourselves write. It's our own darn fault. So if we can take a look at the real language that we put forward to people, instead say, your reports will be taken seriously and evaluated using evidence-based, data-driven practices on an individualized case-by-case basis. We take it seriously, we will do something, and we will get back to you, and we will tell you what we can. We will build trust, and we will not have the absurd outcomes that we get boxed in by our own ridiculous policies. Not that I have an opinion, mind you, right? But it's a great question. Absolutely. There are data that back that up.
Yeah.
There's a problem there to begin with. And we are not in a space where we should be allowing people to have the expectation that subtle forms of violence are acceptable. So they're not. But rarely do people come to medical centers and our hospitals because they're having a great day.
Yeah.
You know, we already come in loaded with anxieties, with concerns, with stressors. And then on top of it, the other stressors in our lives, and our health isn't great. That's why we're here. And healthcare is about healing. It's not about what is the consequence. What is it that we're going to do to, quote, punish someone for their bad behavior? The behavior they're bringing with them might be part of the issue for why they are struggling to begin with. So if we can maintain that compassionate stance towards our patients, our staff may find that they're more able to remain engaged because they're not getting so burned out with people who are hitting the brick walls of the frustrations of our systems. So it all plays together. And grievance is the first step on a pathway towards violence. So when we ourselves are the source of the grievance, and we create systems that generate those grievances on top of stressors that people already have, we're lighting the fuse.